Hi, everyone. My name is Ryan Cullen, and this is going to be my ethical dilemma case study. I'm going to try to get through all of this information in about 10 minutes. I think that's a lofty goal because there's a lot of information to cover. So, my ethical dilemma is going to be about professional burnout and self care. That's going to be the main dilemma. And the case study that I'm presenting is about Marissa. She's a 34-year-old, as you can see, Latina social worker. She works in the mental health agency, and she's experiencing some professional burnout. This is due to heavy caseloads of clients with severe mental health needs. Her clients are predominantly low-income individuals with marginalized communities, including racial and ethnic minorities who face systemic barriers such as homelessness, substance use, and additional traumas. Um, the agency itself is also underfunded, it's understaffed. So the staff are facing long hours with limited resources. So Marissa's emotional and physical exhaustion is beginning to impair her judgment and decision making, which is creating a conflict between her personal and well-being and her professional responsibility to provide ethical care. That's kind of the dilemma. The agency lacks formal self-care policies under regular supervision, contributing to this dilemma as well. So Marissa herself has been working some long hours, minimal breaks, and not a lot of support to meet the demands of her caseloads. So it's kind of the summary of the dilemma, the framework, and the rationale. There's a couple different frameworks to look at. There's ethical relativism, sorry, which this theory rejects fixed rules, and it suggests that ethical decisions should be based in the context of the potential outcomes, such as uh, hoping for the greater good, the greatest good. The other framework that we learned about in Module 6 is ethical absolutism, and that's a theory that really focuses on the importance of fixed moral rules that should be followed regardless of the situation or consequences. So for this case study, I'm going to be utilizing the ethical relativism framework because that framework focuses on evaluating ethical decisions based on the context and the consequences of different courses of actions rather than following like fixed rules. Ethical relativism is appropriate because it allows for flexibility in addressing complex and emotionally taxing solutions. Like Marissa's, where strict adherence to ethical rules, like maintaining client care at all costs, may not lead to the best outcomes for her or her clients. So that's kind of the framework and why I chose it. As far as the code of ethics for social workers go, I found several conflicts in this dilemma. So 101, the commitment to clients is the first one. Marissa is obligated to prioritize her clients' needs, but her emotional exhaustion is beginning to impair her ability to fulfill this commitment. Also 201, the respect for colleagues, the agency's lack of support for Marissa and her colleagues is a factor for the burnout. It's also conflicting with the ethical responsibility to create a supportive work environment for Marissa. 309, commitment to employers. Marissa should maintain professional competence and alert her employer to the need of better staff support, and that this is creating tension between her and the duty to clients and her well-being. And then lastly, 405, impairment. I think Marissa needs to address her burnout to avoid impaired judgment that conflicts with the pressure to continue managing her caseload without any breaks and with her current burnout. As far as the problem in the environmental context, and I'm sorry that my image is overlapping the image, the images, but Marissa is affected by clients with high needs, an overburdened community mental health system, an insufficient agency leadership that doesn't prioritize self-care. I mean, the lack of supervision and funding consistently constrains and perpetuates and exacerbates her burnout. These are all interconnected systems, and they create pressure on Marissa's well-being and professional decision-making. To kind of map that system, I created this eco map, and I'll kind of go over it with you real quick. Let me put myself right there. Okay, so the eco map here for Marissa and her clients, I put them together in a big circle because the systems around her kind of affect both of them because it's a conflict between herself and her clients. So with that, on the immediate environment, the micro systems, Marissa does work with her clients, and they have severe mental health needs, and they're needing that support. The agency where Marissa works lacks formal self-care policies. We already covered that, right? And then her colleagues are involved in that as well. So she's got over to the left of Marissa the agency and the colleagues, and then if you go into the meso, agency leadership is kind of right above colleagues. Basically, the leadership of the agency hasn't established any systems for recognizing and addressing burnout, and they're understaffed too, which kind of goes into the exosystem, the indirect influences for Marissa, which are like the funding and the resources and how the agency gets their money, which is why I put that above the agency leadership, because that doesn't really affect Marissa directly, but it does affect the agency leadership, which does affect Marissa. And then the macro system, the broader social context, I put Marissa's clients and the kind of social inequality of our social systems right now, and then the mental health system in general, which is completely underburdened for community mental health, at least in my area, which is where I based this whole case study off of. And then changes over time. I put down under supervision. So like that could be affected, but it's still outside of the immediate, influence of Marissa and her clients, but supervision directly could impact that as well. So that's my eco map here. See, I keep putting myself over the pictures. There we go. As far as cultural considerations, so Marissa comes from a Latino background, and this may influence her sense of obligation to help predominantly marginalized clients. As culture values seem to influence family and community care, cultural considerations could increase her guilt about prioritizing her self-care. I know I've experienced that myself before, where I've taken care of everyone else but me, and I think a lot of caregivers and social justice warriors do that. Additionally, many of Marissa's clients come from diverse and racial and ethnic backgrounds, and they themselves may be less likely to receive equitable mental health services due to like system barriers. Addressing the cultural dimensions is pretty important when deciding how to balance the client's needs with Marissa's well-being. As far as policies or applicable laws, since the dilemma is an internal one, basically I'm going to be sticking internally in the agencies for these. And like I said, the agency has a lack of formal self-care policies in the agency, and that contributes negatively to the current ethical dilemma. There's no structured systems to support staff well-being or to mitigate burnout, and that leads to compromised ethical practices. The code of ethics emphasizes the need for supervision and professional competence. And without agency policies, Marissa's emotional exhaustion will remain unaddressed. So those are the main policies that need or lacking to be made. As far as solutions go, add the policies. So the fix for this would be the agencies to implement some self-care policies that introduce regular supervision, especially as a social worker, but just in general. Mental health support, reduce caseloads for social workers who are showing signs of burnout. Additionally, a mental health day policy and some really good structured time off systems could provide some much needed relief for any staff to maintain an ethical and effective practice. So I think those are the fixes that I came up with. As far as my own personal bias, in this case, I mean, I did come up with the case. So in assessing my own personal values, I kind of have reflected on the importance that I place on the work-life balance and self-care. I realize that I tend to emphasize the need for professionalism. And I think that I put a lot of the onus on that on them, like ourselves. That could be very difficult if you're not getting the time or the support that you need from the agency that you're working at. So I think acknowledging that bias and that caregiver bias too, and the social justice bias, really knowing and acknowledging that that's a thing, um, and doing my best to manage my own self-care in these kind of situations, is the best that I can do for my own personal bias based on my values. As far as the decision-making model and rationale that I chose, in Module 6, the ethical decision-making model that I identify for this case study, actually, there's kind of two that I thought that fit. I'd argue maybe more, but the first one that really stuck out was clinical pragmatism. It's an approach that focuses on improving practice based on social values. In the context of mental health agencies, the social value of promoting the well-being of both staff and clients is the idea. Encouraging self-care and mental health support to staff. It's a practical response to the demands of emotional taxing work and heavy caseloads. Clinical pragmatism is kind of the reason that I chose that decision-making model, because it ensures like staff well-being to improve overall practice in general. The other practice that I was looking at was ethics of caring. And with ethics and caring, it emphasizes the emotional and relational aspects of ethical decisions. This kind of addresses burnout through self-care, and it reflects the idea that caring for the emotional needs of staff is really big to ethical practices. And if you prioritize staff well-being, agencies are caring for their workers in a way that maintains the quality of care for their clients. And that's kind of like aligns with that decision-making model. And that's why I would choose ethics of caring and also clinical pragmatism. So as far as evaluating the outcomes, for the fix of this, I would probably need to monitor if I would need to put myself in the position of Marissa's supervisor, and in that situation, I would need to monitor Marissa's emotional well-being and her ability to return to like an ethical, competent practice. Regular supervisions and feedback from both Marissa and her clients can be used to assess whether her burnout is being effectively managed. Addition to that, I would implement the agency self-care policies, and I'd make sure that they get reviewed annually to make sure the long-term sustainability is actually feasible for employees. As far as the resolution, I think the dilemma was addressed by recommending that Marissa reduce her caseload temporarily and take a brief leave. This will give her time to recover. The agency leadership agreed to will agree to implement a pilot self-care program. That's a good first step, I think. And then also that will include regular supervision with mental health support for staff. Marissa's emotional well-being should improve after returning, and she was able to engage with her clients more effectively in the case study after implementing those things. As far as evaluation of that intervention, I think I'd go with using a person and environment framework. I would evaluate how Marissa's social environment, like her workspace, leadership, community system, contributed to her burnout. And I think by assessing both the individual, which is Marissa's self-care, and environmental factors, which are like the agency policy changes, the intervention would create a more supportive environment for Marissa to thrive as a professional, but it would also improve the outcomes for both not just her, but for her clients as well. As far as this whole ethical dilemma is concerned, it's the main influence on me has been just to really value self-care and watch for burnout. And then look at the agencies that I am going to be working in and with to see if they do have policies for like staff mental health, to avoid burnout and regular supervision. I think that's just going to make me an overall better clinician, and it'll have better client care outcomes for the individual seeking help. I just want to thank you guys for watching my presentation. And if you guys have any questions at all about my ethical dilemma, just feel free to let me know. Thanks.